high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. Happy Holy Week. It is Carrie Janice here, and I am once again with my good friend, Mike Walsh.
Carrie, it's so nice to be with you. I even though we are back in Zoom, I know we prefer to do these things in person since things started getting a little easier, but unfortunately we are on Zoom, but not because we have to be necessarily, but because we were trying to get everybody together, and this was the thing that was going to make it easiest for everyone, so we took that route. But anyway, no, it is Holy Week, and I always like doing a special Holy Week episode. I will admit, we're recording this on the Friday before Holy Week. And are you feeling like, are you looking forward to Holy Week coming?
I am so pumped. All right, Holy Week pumps me up every year, and after last year, I'm like double pumped. Like the normal pump of Holy Week, plus the extra pump of we missed it last year, so we get to actually have Holy Week this year. Some changes. We know there's going to be changes, like washing of the feet, and I'm sure we're going to talk about many of these throughout this podcast. But the overall sense of what Holy Week is, and that kind of drawing closer to Jesus's passion and death, and then ultimately to get ready for his resurrection and celebrate that. Then for 50 days, I am so ready, so ready.
I'm right there with you. This is always my favorite. I was actually explaining to someone recently, this is my favorite week of the liturgical year for a couple of reasons. One, because it's spiritually nourishing to me. But in my role as the communications director, it's also my busiest week, but it's my favorite busiest week. So I'm going to be everywhere the bishop's going to be this week. It's Monday and Tuesday, or Monday and Wednesday will be the only 2 days where I'm not really working at something. And I love that. I mean, it's an entire week that you have to actually make an effort not to be touched by our faith during this week.
Oh, it's so true.
It really is. So it makes me very excited about that. But we have a couple of guests on today, but I wanted to bring in one of our guests first. Okay. And Donna Ottaviano Britt is with us. Donna, how are you?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Carrie. Good to be with you, and in front of an amazing week for us.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's a very exciting and uplifting time. This week is always peculiar in some ways because I do get very excited and I get very happy for it. But of course, it's in many ways, a very solemn week. We know it ends well, but it's a very solemn week. But even in that, to misuse a word, that solemnity, it's just something I really look forward to. So, but before we get down that road, I wanted to bring Donna on because Donna was on an episode 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I think, when we were talking to Father Chris Walsh and Ricard Kajewski, who were doing our Lenten retreat. That
was close, Mike.
I got in the ballpark. Rashara said, as long as I could get in the ballpark, she was okay.
You got the syllables at least, right?
That's
the number of syllables.
Thank you. It was a great episode, but it opened the way it ordinarily opens when it's just me and Donna together, where I kind of needle her a little bit and she kind of needles me back, and which is unusual because she's not really a needler. I kind of make her do it. So I wanted to just address something because we did get some comments about it, which is to say, I want everyone to know that Donna and I work together almost every single day. And I have nothing but the highest respect and love for Donna of anybody I work with. But because we work so often together, we get into this kind of, you work with people closely, you needle them, you stuff like that. I don't think I necessarily crossed the line on that episode, but I do think people saw a window into our relationship that perhaps might have been unsettling to them if they weren't used to it. So I just wanted to kind of bring it up now and to apologize because, I should know better that you're all kind of like guests in my home and I should be on my best behavior when guests are with us. So I just kind of wanted to address that and say that for anyone who was worried in any way, shape or form that I have any kind of unkind feelings for Donna, please know that that is not the case, and that I truly have a respect for her that I would say is second to none. Maybe her husband likes her more, but other than that,
that was beautiful.
I'm like number
Mike.
3. I'm number 3.
Mike's apologetic little rant to Donna. I
know, really. And you know what? There's a part of me that is so grateful that this is being recorded.
You'll have it forever.
I'll always have it. But I do, and I shared with Mike little bit of feedback that came in that people didn't necessarily like the spar. And when you're listening to it, or even if you're watching it and you don't know us well, you don't know we do this actually quite a bit.
Yeah.
It just doesn't always land as well as we would hope that people would find the humor in it. So, I thought it was really great of Mike. I shared it with him and he said, well, let's just deal with it straight up on the next thing that we do together. And so thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. And I really enjoy all of my work, with you, and we do have a great collaboration. So it's good work.
This has been the reason, and just to kind of recap this right before we get into Holy Week. So this has been a busy time of Lent for us. And the reason it's so busy is because of what Donna's been able to bring to the table, which has been in the midst of a pandemic, she keeps coming after us. It's like, okay, what are we going to do to provide to the people? What are we going to provide? What are we going to provide? Because some parishes were not open 100%. Some people aren't comfortable leaving their homes yet. Mm-hmm. So Donna, God bless her, created all these ideas for things we could do during last Christmas or during last Lent, during last Easter, again during Advent, Lent again this year. She's already starting to push us into what can we do for the Easter season or for the next 50 days after Easter. So so I do a lot of it myself. John Kalitz, my department, we do a lot of the work, but the idea person for most of the stuff is Donna. So that's the reason why you see this. And the truth of the matter is that and as many people know, we used to work together on the convocation when that was going on 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago this week, if I'm not mistaken. Today even.
We're having an anniversary.
It is an anniversary. And it was a great deal of work, but whatever successes we've had and whatever things that my department's been able to bring forward, it's because of all of Donna's ideas and being able to convince people to take part in them, being able to convince the bishop to do it to begin with. So anyway, that's a long way of saying, for anyone who's concerned that I have anything less than 100% respect for Donna, please know that I don't. However, it was absolutely my fault that last episode. Those jokes did not land the way I thought they were going to. And you were not wrong to call me out on it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I really do appreciate everything you said, but not every idea is mine, but you and your team are great collaborators. So
thank you.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody believes all this stuff, because usually when you talk this much, everyone's going to go, oh, somebody must have yelled at it. But that wasn't the case. Donna just called me up and says, this is the response I got. It's like, oh my God, we got to fix that right now. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys are both gems. I love working with both of you guys as well. It's been, at least especially in the past year, this time last year, we just started cranking so much out, and I got happily pulled into it, and I love working with both of you too. So I was actually really excited about this podcast. Yeah. And of course we still have one more guest coming on. So we're all not even here yet.
I know. So we're 8 minutes in. Let's get this party started. So Holy Week is our subject this week. And usually for the entirety of the 3 years that we've had this podcast, during Holy Week and Advent, or during Lent and Advent, I always try to bring a new guest in to talk about what Holy Week means, right? And what we should be focusing on during that time. So I was talking to Carrie and Donna about people that we could possibly bring in, and Donna was adamant that we should bring in Father Ray Gormley. So Donna, could you introduce and give Father Ray Gormley's background to us?
Well, I don't know if I can give the entire background, but I will share with you some of the reasons that I thought of Father Gormley as a great guest for us this week. So Father Gormley is the pastor at Incarnation Parish in Mantua. I've been there for a number of years as a big parish, and I've had the pleasure of working with his team from the convocation since before the convocation and through all this time afterward. But I also had the chance to go on pilgrimage to the Holy Land last year with Father Gormley, the pilgrimage led by Bishop and by Father Hughes. And it was a remarkable experience. So it perfectly ties, right? So we came home from that, right, as everything was locked down within a few weeks of our return home. But there are some really wonderful things that we had the chance to experience, and we'll get a chance to share some of it here on the podcast. But because of that experience, it was just a year ago, I thought, what a great guest this would be for us in Holy Week. And also because Father Gormley was the first person I interviewed while we were there. So Mike, again, has an idea. Is like, you should interview people while you're over there and you should upload them onto your page. And so So there's a story we'll tell eventually around how I got Father Gormley to talk to me on the first day, like do that first interview. And we've been up a really, really long time by that point, and it was great.
So Father Gormley, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you.
Yes,
Thank you.
welcome, Father.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm glad, Mike and Donna, I'm glad you're reconciled now. So
I was waiting for Mike to ask you to go to confession after this podcast at one point. I didn't know how deep that was going to go, but
I make my
public penance, give him some sackcloth and ashes out in front of the chancery.
That's right. I make my confessions very public. That's right. So Father Gormley, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Happy to be.
So by the time people are listening to this, it would either be Palm Sunday or have been shortly after Palm Sunday. So, I mean, I guess from your perspective as a priest, we kind of talked about our perspectives as lay people, as Holy Week is upon us, usually what's going through your mind as you're preparing for it?
I love Holy Week. It's really the summit of everything of who we are, as Catholic Christians. And Carrie, you said it yourself, last year it was just beyond words, to try to explain what Holy Week was. But again, Donna, just coming back from the Holy Land, everything was so fresh and so vivid, in our minds. And even though they were very low celebrations, and I said this to the other priests and the deacons here, I said, even with the absence of the people, and all the preparation that usually goes in for the ceremonies for Holy Week, it really allowed, I think, a greater sense of depth, of really putting yourself into the celebration. Not that we don't do it, every year, but
right.
With the lack of the people in the church, you were more ingrained as to what was being celebrated each day during Holy Week. So I think that, as we begin with Palm Sunday this coming weekend, we might say that it's just a little encore performance of what else is to take place, from Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter.
Yeah.
No, you're right. That's something that Carrie, talked to me about last year when we hit that time period, which was, or actually it wasn't Carrie. I apologize. It was Donna who kept mentioning that having gone through a pandemic or having the pandemic hit during Lent, I think actually it actually raised the level of our appreciation for Lent and the loss that occurs during that, and particularly the loss during Holy Week. I mean, all of us lost that. It was terrible, at least for people around the country, it might not have been as bad, but in New Jersey, we were in the midst of the lockdown at that point. And it was like our faith had been ripped away from us. Our physical faith had been ripped away from us. And I know Donna repeatedly was like, in some ways and I think in her mind, she kind of leaned into it a little bit and said, you know what, let's use this time to really focus on our spirituality. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Donna, but I that's how I remember you talking about it. And just as a reminder, remember to unmute yourself when you come back on.
I should really do that, right? So I think as we, and I used a cavalier phrase last year. I was like, this is the lentiest Lent ever. You talk about The other thing I think for us is how much gratitude do we find when we've lost what we love? Lent was difficult. Holy Week was like, I was like a little bit like agony. Not that we can ever really relate to Jesus hanging on the cross, but I was like, wow, I love everything about Holy Week, everything from Palm Sunday all the way through to what we do on Holy Thursday, to what we do on Good Friday in the afternoon. And I love Tenebrae services on Good Friday at nighttime, and then to the glory of Easter. It was like, wow, I'm not having that, so it was quite difficult.
I think almost though, like in some ways now, of course, thank you, Jesus, it's not like that this year, but like looking back, I'm like thankful I had it because it allowed me to, like you said, Donna, gain this like greater depth of our faith and be able to really, truly appreciate what Jesus did because we just stripped down everything. Everything got stripped away. And the distractions, because I even know sometimes on Good Friday, I'm like, Fridays are my day to clean. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Good Friday. I can't clean on Good Friday. I gotta be in prayer, but my house is dirty. Like, and you're like trying to find that balance, and you try, because you work all week, and it's just kind of like, trying to find that balance. Well, last year, there was nothing but time, like, because everything was stripped away. There was no distractions. There was no, like, all the real work that I was doing was gone. It was changed. So I've been looking back actually a lot. For some of the maybe younger listeners, they have this app called Time Hop. Time Hop allows you to look back on your last year and any year you posted anything on social media. And I've been looking back all since the pandemic started, every day on Time Hop, and just an appreciation. And now as we're starting to hit, there were some things in Lent that were on there, like the Lenten retreat coming up. That would have been this time last year, and Stations of the Cross being live streamed. And I was just like, my heart had this huge gratitude. And now as we're going into Palm Sunday, again, this extra excitement that is going to happen that would not be present if last year didn't happen. So in some ways, I'm like, find myself extremely grateful for last year, because it allowed me to really gain a depth that could not have happened unless a pandemic happened. Because when does everything else shut down in your life?
No.
Never happens.
No, it doesn't happen. So thinking as people come into Holy Week, could we spend a few minutes, because I know we've talked for a while already, and we're just going to pack this whole podcast with, can we talk a little bit about the Chrism Mass that's going to happen on Tuesday?
Yes, that's another great part.
Love to talk a little bit about that. And so, Father Gormley, would you mind? So Mike, I want to be clear, you're live streaming the Chrism Mass, right?
I am. It is I tell people it's my favorite Mass of the year. And it's my favorite Mass of the year for two reasons. It's when the various oils are blessed. And it's I wish our live streams could be in smell-o-vision, because it is the nicest smelling Mass of the year. It's unbelievable. You see, yeah, it's true. It's really incredible. It also has some great things to be seen. There's there's a procession of the oils into the church from the back. Usually the deacons are holding it, and there are these enormous jugs. And and we always make sure we have a camera on these guys when they're coming in, because one day someone's going to drop one and it's going to be amazing.
It's not going to be amazing. That's going to be rough.
It will not be amazing. Mike Beddix is not going to feel good if that ever happens.
Of course, I don't want it to happen. I'm just going to make sure I have a camera on it. But it is, so there's these huge jugs of oil that come in, and they're seated at the front, and Bishop blesses them. But it's also, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk to Father Gormley about a little bit, was it's really, I should say that the Chrism Mass is usually done on Thursdays. In the Diocese of Camden, we do it on Tuesdays, because our diocese is so large. It would be quite the sacrifice to ask our priests to come to the Chrism Mass on Thursday morning and then get back to their parishes for the Holy Thursday Masses at night. So instead, we do it on a Tuesday, and there's usually a luncheon afterwards with the bishop and his brother priests, which is a beautiful thing that's done. But it's also, and Father Gormley, tell me if I'm wrong, it's also a reminder. It's an opportunity for the priests to sort of come together and focus on their priesthood that day, because isn't it?
It is, because the beauty of the Chrism Mass really is how the priests, together with the bishop, come together, and it really symbolizes the great sense of unity among the clergy in the diocese, together with the bishop, and the. You said yourself, the blessing of the oils, the oil of the catechumenate, the oil of the infirm, and the sacred chrism. Oil has such a rich history in the sacred scriptures. Remember, it says in the Psalms, "You anoint my head with oil." So all of these things are really manifested so beautifully at the Chrism Mass. Excuse me.
It is. It's a visually, it's just a gorgeous Mass. And in most years, it's also wonderful to see all the priests there, retired priests, priests in practice, associate pastor, everybody. They own a collar. They're there. It's a sea of priests. It's like an ordination. It's incredible.
It is. Beautiful.
I remember attending a Chrism Mass while in college. It was my first time ever going. At that point, they asked for representatives from the Newman Center at Rowan, the campus ministry there, the Catholic campus ministry, to bring up one of the smaller jugs, like to present it. So me and my boyfriend at the time, it's not my husband, my boyfriend at the time were selected to do that. And it was very special. And I remember just being very touched seeing, because I had never been to one before that. And it was it really grew my depth in knowing how big our diocese is, because I didn't realize it at the time. You know, I was only a freshman in college, and I had grown up in the Archdiocese of Newark, so I didn't really know much about our Camden Diocese at the time. And it was like my first taste of all the priests in our diocese. So many which I know very well now, which is kind of exciting to look back 20 years ago, plus 20 plus years ago. Oof.
For me, so I went to the Chrism Mass for the first time 5 years ago. I had never been until I started to work at the diocese.
Okay.
And for me, there are two elements that are particularly nice. I know I was kind of joking around before, but there are two elements that are really nice. I love seeing the recently ordained priests, who at that point now have almost a full year under them, with the senior priests and retired priests. There's just something about seeing the younger priests and the older priests together that I just absolutely love. And they usually, I don't know why it happens like this, they're oftentimes mingled together. So when they're processing in, when they're seated together, it's just great to see them all together.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, I don't know, Father Gormley might disagree with me, but oftentimes for many of the masses, Bishop has given the homily. And usually when he does the homily at the Chrism Mass, he is quite direct with his brother priests about sort of his expectations for them. And sometimes I wonder, like Father Gormley, I mean, you've been on the receiving end on some of those homilies. You feel like Bishop is really like focusing on you that very minute?
Yeah, I mean, and it should be that way, you know, because we all have the bishop is accountable to his ministry as well as the priests are to their own ministry, you know. So I think we need that challenge that's put before us at the Mass. And, you know, the other beautiful thing that I love about the Chrism Mass is we renew our priestly promises at those Masses. You know, so it kind of like transport you back to the day of your own ordination, you know, and you think back of lying prostrate on the floor and making those promises to the bishop on the day of ordination. You know, it's that constant grace that we're asking for every day, you know, to be faithful to the vocation, you know, that God has given to us, you know, so it's beautiful. It really is.
It's probably one of the very few times that all the priests are together besides ordinations. And I guess in October, the convocation you guys get together for, but probably the very few times that you see all your brother priests and some
that
deacons as well.
Priest funeral.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess
right,
that was the only few times. So that has to be really nice, and see your brothers. You know, it's like a family reunion almost in a sense.
Yeah. Although we should also mention that with Father Gormley, it is kind of a family reunion because Father Gormley has he's one of three family members who are priests of the Diocese of Camden, correct? Right?
That's correct. My uncle, Monsignor Hodge, and Father Ray Kennedy is our cousin. So
that is so nice. Wow. What did your family do to cultivate these vocations? I want to know the secret because that is awesome.
I guess we had a lot of people praying for us along the way.
Yeah, some holy aunts and uncles around there.
Yep.
So this year, you know, guidelines are still the way they are. Chrism Mass for this year is not open to the public. However, that's why we're live streaming it. So we do a great job with live streams. So if you're in the Diocese of Camden, it's going to be at noon on Tuesday, March 30th. We'll be broadcasting it from St. Agnes Church in Blackwood. But I promise you, our live streams are great. You'll get the feel for the event itself, and then next year, God willing, do make sure you make it to a Chrism Mass because if you ever get the chance, because it really is something to be seen. So by all means, come out and see it when you can. But in the meantime, check out our live streams. So that's the Chrism Mass. So that's kind of, Holy Week starts with Palm Sunday, but I always kind of. For whatever reason in my head, I got to separate Palm Sunday from the rest of the week. And Chrism Mass is like, I guess maybe it's because it's the first time I'm working on during the week. I got to kick off with that. But then we roll into the rest of the week. So I guess, Father Gormley, and that actually is open for the two of you, or Donna and Carrie, you're great at this too. As you're approaching Holy Thursday, are there things you're looking at? Are there things you're looking to do to get yourself ready for the final Triduum and Easter?
Yeah, I was reading recently some of the materials that I picked up in the Holy Land, and just to have been in that upper room where Christ celebrated the Last Supper with the disciples. And, things were pointed out to us, in the pilgrimage about the pelican was on top of one of the columns. Remember that, Donna?
Mhm.
How the pelican would pluck its breasts to feed its young. And that great symbol of the Eucharist, where Christ is constantly giving himself to us, in the gift of the Eucharist. In that upper room has so much significance for us, because it wasn't just that the Last Supper was celebrated there, but it's the room where all the disciples were gathered together after the resurrection. It's the same room where Our Lady and the apostles were at Pentecost, in the outpouring of the Holy Spirit that descended upon them. So it's not the original cenacle, but to still be in that building, in the proximity of where so much took place, the beginnings of our faith. So to try to almost animate that, to the people and make it come alive for them. And then the same thing, with Good Friday, how powerful it was to walk that way of the cross in the darkness of early morning. And you just try to picture to yourself the chaos that was going on Good Friday. It's just incomprehensible,
Yeah.
And to climb those steps of Calvary, powerful, absolutely powerful.
I remember watching that video that you posted, Donna, of you walking through early in the morning. You were whispering. It was 3, 4 in the morning. You guys were going into the way the cross, was it, right? That video. Yeah. Tell us more about that, because I remember it being so powerful at the time. But
Well, it was really remarkable. So we were up at 3:00 in the morning, and Wormley is the one that led us through each of the stations as we headed right to the Holy Sepulchre. And it was such a powerful thing to pray at all the locations, right, where we know, right, where he fell, where Veronica wiped his face, and we're traveling. And so Father Hughes said, you should really be, get your phone and get your mic. I'm like, okay, I thought I was all in on this. Okay, let me go dig in my backpack and find everything. But it was it felt like such a sacred thing. It was dark. Everyone was quiet. We were praying. So of course I was whispering into my microphone. Trust me, the rest of the pilgrimage, I took a lot of heat for that, for my whispering video. It got played on the bus often. Father Hughes had a good time with that.
that's funny.
But you really kind of think, wow, I am walking in the footsteps of Jesus. And what I would say is, for those that think, okay, I've never been to the Holy Land, for those that are listening, like, I'm never going to get to the Holy Land, you can do that right here. You can walk his way, right? So I've been on this podcast enough, and I've talked about it enough in other places, right? I'm a huge, St. Ignatius kind of girl, because he's my guy. And if you look at how he teaches imaginative prayer, right, is to really engage all of your senses in that. Just immerse yourself in the stations of the cross and be present. Be someone in the crowd. Be Veronica who wipes his face, right? We're talking about Holy Thursday now. Be at the table. And if you really can't put yourself at the table because you're like, I don't belong at the table with any of the apostles, be someone who's making the food that they're serving. Like, be in it. What do you see? What do you hear? What's it like to look at Jesus talk? What's it like to watch Jesus wash the feet of his disciples? Right. So I know we're not going to do that in the church this year for safety reasons. And having been one of those people that happened once, I was invited to that. I was like, oh, holy schmo, because the priest is really Jesus.
Agreed.
I mean, in persona Christi.
It's powerful.
You can do all of these things as you're sitting at services on Holy Thursday and be in it. And think, what would it have been like to be in that upper room? What does it smell like? What does Jesus's voice sound like? What does his face look like? Right, Father?
And it's, it's just not Holy Thursday, but it's every encounter that we have with Christ at every mass,
Very true. One year, my parents' parish, where I was living at the time, they invited everyone to come wash their feet. It wasn't just 12, like whoever wanted to come up, like a communion line almost. And the priest I got, I was like literally just floored. Every person that came to him, he not only, did the wash your feet, and we know it's not like he's scrubbing anything. He's like pouring water over your feet symbolically. But at the end, he dried it, and then he kissed the top of your foot. And I filled up with tears because I thought, how beautiful is that? Because it's such a humbling thing to do. I mean, not everybody would have the willpower to do that for various reasons, right? But I mean, it's somebody's foot, and he did that. And I filled up with tears at that moment. I thought, this is just so beautiful. And I truly felt Christ there. Like there was no way I did not feel Christ there because he was present truly in that priest. It was beautiful.
Yeah. And I think also, like, we're talking about Holy Week and so, I'm big on have you gone to confession? Are you ready? Right.
Yes.
We're having confessions. Some parishes are doing them on Wednesday night to leave the light on, for we have Saturday, we have Sunday. And it's, even to that sacrament is in persona Christi.
Yes.
So if I go to confession at Incarnation, I'm not confessing my sins to Father Gormley, although it might be hard, right? Because I kind of know him. But Father Gormley is in persona Christi in the confessional. Mm-hmm. That's how we have.
And the turn, wonderful. Let me tell you that for the Leave the Lights on Wednesdays, the turnouts have been wonderful.
Beautiful.
At least an hour, half to 2 hours every Wednesday. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
That's great to hear that.
Yeah.
So great.
It's such a grace.
Yes. And many parishes, even for Holy Week, they increase their confession schedule, which take advantage of that to our listeners. If it's been a while, especially because of the pandemic, maybe you haven't come out for confessions because you're a little worried. Many of them are spaced out even more, not just in a confessional, but they are, it is beautiful to be able to receive that grace, especially during Holy Week, to prepare yourself for this great sacrifice that Jesus gave his entire life, and now to receive those graces of confession, and then of course of all the graces from the masses during the Triduum. Just do it. If you're afraid, I give you a little encouragement today to know that the priest is Jesus there, and he wants to heal you. He does.
Yeah.
I tell people there is no sin, no matter how many times it might have committed, there is no sin that is bigger than God's mercy and God's forgiveness. And I think it's hard for us sometimes, because I think sometimes it's the lesson that we have to learn to forgive ourselves, leave the past to the past, but the beauty of that sacramental absolution, it's that in itself is almost like a resurrection. In humility, we come and kneel and ask for that mercy, that forgiveness. And when we stand up, when we lead the sacrament, it's like that little mini resurrection that we experience in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So true.
Because whatever anxiety you have on the way in, it is completely gone.
Yep.
Completely gone, and it feels so good.
Supernatural grace right there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we got through Holy Thursday. We're now, I guess, at Good Friday, right? We haven't really touched too much on Good Friday. So Father,
growing up, Good Friday was the part of Holy Week I think I focused on the most, maybe even more than Palm Sunday.
I do agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was because I went to a Catholic school or what, but even in those lean years that a lot of young people go through when they, usually in college and stuff like that, they start to turn away a little bit and they're trying to figure out their way. Good Friday was the one day I would never allow that to happen. Like, that was kind of my rock day. Like, even I remember as a kid, my grandfather had a boat down the Chesapeake, and we all had to go down and help him open the boat. And he was, for whatever reason, decided to do it on Good Friday. He was a good Catholic, but still we did it on Good Friday. I'm not sure why, but I remember that I ended up bringing a Bible with me so that at 3 p.m. I read the Gospels at 3 p.m. because I wanted to read the Passion stuff. So whatever it was, even as a 12 or 13-year-old, it was still affecting me.
That's awesome. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know if other people are affected the same way, but I think that I don't know. Maybe it's because it's the saddest. I don't know. Is it the saddest day of the Christian year or Christian calendar? I don't know how to describe it.
It's they call it Good Friday, but it's good because of what was given for us. Christ gave his life for us, for our salvation. Yeah, and I think it's good, that we had that sense of sorrow, of what Christ went through for us.
Yeah.
And it should give us a greater sense of gratitude, for what he endured for our salvation. Like I said earlier, none of us could ever imagine that chaos of Good Friday and the culmination of Calvary.
Yeah. Although Holy Thursday does end, I was not a big, it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago that I really kind of went to my first Holy Thursday Mass. And so I wasn't aware of, like stripping the church that happens at the end of the Holy Thursday Mass. And that is that kind of like that emptiness of like having Christ removed from us physically, actually. I mean, Christ is removed from the tabernacle at that point.
Yeah. It really brings it to us, the visual aspect of it. It kind of brings it to make us recognize it more. I think also too with Good Friday, I agree, Mike, that my family put a little more focus on it. Like if we were going to go to any Mass out of the Triduum, it was going to be, well, of course, Easter Sunday we go, but Holy Thursday or Good Friday, it was going to be Good Friday that we went to as a family. And I remember as a kid asking my mom, I probably was like 10 years old, 10 years old. And there was after Mass, they have that time that you could just pray. The church is open. And so we prayed a little bit and then we were leaving. And there was a woman by the crucifix sobbing. And I said to my mom, why is she crying, Mommy? I can remember this so distinctly as a little child. And she said, well, that's because we're remembering, Jesus's death. He's not here. And I remember that every Good Friday since that moment. It's amazing the little moments that stick with you. Well, like you, Mike, bringing your Bible at 12 years old that day. And I think, it's a really big call to the family to put that focus on it. We have a beautiful high school student who is very much on the spectrum in our youth group. And he comes and he's a beautiful, beautiful individual. And we love him for who he is. He's very sweet and he brings a lot of joy to our group. And last night at youth group, because we won't have youth group during Holy Week, we did a little exercise with the cross, kneeling at the cross and placing some petitions at the foot of the cross, or maybe things we were struggling with, sins we're struggling with. And this little boy, well, he's not little, he's actually 19 years old, but he placed his petitions there and he started crying. And the whole youth group, I think, because of his innocence and his purity of him, who he is, we all just felt it. Like we all felt it. And he was, I love you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. And he was sobbing. And many of the youth came over to try to console him. And it was beautiful. And he then was talking about after Good Friday. And he said, we have to be quiet on Good Friday, Carrie. We have to be quiet. Shh, it's going to be Good Friday. We have to be quiet. And he repeats a lot. And, I say, yes, you're right, Georgie. Good Friday's coming. We have to be quiet. And so he knew that. And I was like, in the simplest form, I was like, you know what? This kid's got it. Like, this is what we all need to hear right now. He's got it. And that's truly what it is, that sense of solemnness, quietness. But it's only because if the family creates that space. And his family, I know they're very devout. They create that space in their household to be quiet. And, we have to all remember that, I think. So if we can kind of prepare ourselves, our families, especially the leaders of your household, the parents, to create that space of quietness, remove screens, whether it be tablets, iPhones, computers, TVs off, just to create that silentness. It's, between 12 and 3, or at least at 3 o'clock at the minimum, it's going to do some good and plant that seed in your children, especially to carry that with them throughout their life for Good Friday.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to do anything either from 12 to 3. It was like lockdown.
That's exactly what it was. It was lockdown. You could do nothing. Yeah. And for me, it was only television, right? There weren't all those other choices.
Yeah.
So it was just TV. So there would be none of that. It was quiet. It was prayerful. It was no work, so that's kind of how we grew up, approaching Good Friday. But I also love, am I allowed to transition now? I want to into the Tenebrae services that happen. So Father Gormley. So I went to my first Tenebrae service a couple of years ago. I totally love Tenebrae services. So can you talk a little bit about that for the listeners so they understand? Not everyone goes to that, right? I find churches are very crowded, for the afternoon service, but not always for what happens on Good Friday night.
Yeah, a lot of parishes don't have the Tenebrae. It's a lot of work. I remember when I was in the seminary, I was in the choir, and so when I was at St. Charles, we would go down to the cathedral on Palm Sunday and sing for the Palm Sunday Mass, and then we'd have to be back to the cathedral a couple hours later for the Tenebrae, and everything that we sang was all in Latin. But it was all a meditation on the 7 last words of Christ. And it is a beautiful ceremony to see, I don't know is there anything out there like on YouTube with the Tenebrae? I've never looked for it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there would be, yeah. But like to understand like what's going on there, like the reading of the 7 last, is it come from the Psalms, Father Gormley? So I'm not an expert on Tenebrae. I just know what it's like to experience, right? So if you think about what's read out of the Psalms from him, because he repeats, right? The Psalms, that was part of how they knew, right? Yeah. He said from hanging from the cross, but there's all the candles, there's the repositioning. Am I saying it right? The repositioning of the Eucharist. And then it's so quiet. And so the candles are lit in a certain order and the candles go out in a certain order. And then, there is a loud noise that is supposed to happen, which symbolizes the stone being moved to the tomb.
Oh, I never went to one of these. This sounds awesome.
Oh, you're like, I'm present here for this.
Yeah.
Tomb as they roll the stone. It's magnificent.
Where did you go to one of these Tenebrae?
I think the last one I went to was over at my parish at St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Oh, nice. Because our parish is very different that evening. We're having living stations of the cross by the youth group, which is nice.
Yeah, that counts.
It's awesome. So, but this is beautiful. I didn't even know this was a thing. This is really great.
It's really great. See, and Mike is going to be like, listen, Stations of the Cross are fine. See, this is the richness of the Catholic.
This is true.
Well, that's actually what I was going to say. Is that's the
I just beat you to it.
Well, thank you. That's why this week is so good. Is that there are so many elements. It's great if you can do all of them. It really is. But if you can't, if it's not available to you, if you're busy, if you have family needs, if you have work needs and stuff like that, there is something going on this entire week that you can make yourself available to. And the thing is unlike Advent, which is constantly distracted by Christmas and preparing for Christmas and Christmas parties and shopping and decorating, all that stuff, it doesn't really happen during this time of year. The only thing you're really competing with now is warm weather and sunny days going till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But in the good old days pre-pandemic, one of the best things to do was on Holy Thursday, you'd go to 7 churches. Carrie, that was something you were a part of many times, right?
We do it, and we're doing it this year. I'm so excited to have it back. Yes, we call it church hop. Our youth group has coined the term church hopping. Somebody said it once, and it stuck. So, but it's traditionally, yes, church visits on Holy Thursday. So looking forward to that as well. But yeah, and that's the thing with this. I know I struggle with this myself. What can we do? How much are we going to do of it? How much for me in my position, and I know the same for you, Mike, how much are we going to live stream? What can we put out there, for our parishioners to watch from home if they can't make it? But, the truth, I'm going to use the mic line. The truth of the matter is, you say that a lot, right? The truth of the matter is, what is going to bring you closer in holiness? What is going to grow your faith more? What is God calling you to, calling your family to? How are you going to, create it at home? I know people that do a last supper service at home where, I can't think of the name of the word of it. It's called, there's a word for it. The
Seder?
Seder meal. There it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh,
the word escaped me. Yeah.
That is my favorite thing to do. And I don't get to do it every Lent or every Triduum, but when the Passover falls, right? I've been to many parishes that have Seder dinners as part of their parish life. It's the best.
It's a really cool thing.
Go make friends with a Jewish person or convince your pastor to do a Seder meal because it's very Catholic. It's very Old Testament. it's a
It's our
wonderful thing to
roots.
be a part of.
It's our roots.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, how much are you going to do and what can you do? And I think what is going to call you to holiness, what is going to, make you grow, do those things. And maybe it's trying something new, right? Maybe it's for somebody that's never been to Holy Thursday Mass and you're free next Thursday on April 1st. Go to Holy Thursday Mass then, because try it. And like, if I was free for Tenebrae, I would totally go try that because that sounds amazing. Even if it meant driving to St. Maximilian Kobe Parish, which is not close to me, but if it meant doing that, like that sounds amazing. So I think that's what we can take from all this is what
Now I'm afraid. I want to go look at the schedule and see if they're doing it. I don't know Friday and it's not there.
Well, I'm not free, so but for our listeners, maybe if you could, if you could do a quick search real quick while we're wrapping up here. But
There are a lot of.
Sorry, I always encourage people just to try to take the opportunity really to put themselves into Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and if it's possible to attend the Easter Vigil, because there has to be a cohesiveness, to celebrate those 3 days. It's to miss one, it's you have that breakup, and just to do all three of them together, it's so beautiful, it's so rich and edifying, in faith.
yes,
And I think that's probably a perfect transition to take us to the Easter Vigil, which the Easter Vigil and Easter Sunday, I've kind of decided upon myself. This may not be true. I'm not saying it. As I often remark here, I'm not a theologian, but the Easter Vigil Mass and the Easter Sunday Mass are almost like two different masses.
yeah.
Because the Easter Vigil, if you've never been to an Easter Vigil, go to an Easter Vigil. It is your Mass times 3.
The highest.
It really is. If depending on how your parish does it, it usually starts with an open flame outside. Now this year, everything's going to be a little different, so it's whatever the guidelines are allowed. But in a normal year, it typically starts with the pastoral candle being lit outside and a big bonfire. Or however they're going to do it. You come into the church, everything is dark, all the lights are out. Sometimes you'll do it by candlelight, sometimes not. Then you'll have the up to 7 readings. At some point in there, the lights will come back on again. Most Easter Vigil Masses include bringing in new members to the church, having gone through RCIA or whatever the process in that diocese is called.
They're now called the elect at that point. They're coming
Right.
in, yeah.
The elect,
Yeah,
and
which is
so
so
it's this
special.
beautiful, massive rebirth. Really, it is. I mean, it is the restart of the. Well, I don't know. I was about to say it's the restart of the liturgical year. I'm not sure if that's correct, but yeah.
Advent.
No, Mike,
Advent is.
that's not what it is. You get your dates mixed up.
But
Once again,
it is
not a
the new.
theologian, not a-
But you know what you are thinking is that the new Paschal candle is lit.
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I think you were thinking of, and that is lit, and that's a beautiful symbol of the rebirth of our church, and
The resurrection.
You hear that the work of the bees making the wax in that one song, and it's true. It's the work of the bees who create this beautiful candle now that our church is symbolized as the resurrection. Like it's lit, and the whole church becomes lit from that one candle, and it's amazing to show how like the faith is spreading, and from that one candle, which was symbolic Jesus Christ rising from the dead. How amazing and beautiful. Father, can you speak a little bit more about
But
the vigil?
yeah. When you think about that, and then during the Mass where we renew our baptismal promises and go around and sprinkle everybody with holy water, but in that renewal of the baptismal promises, we look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. We're celebrating Christ's resurrection, and because of our baptism into him, please God that we do share that gift of the resurrection one day.
Mhm.
Death can often seem to have the final word. Death never has the final word because Christ has triumphed death.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Amen to that. That's true. I love all of that, though, everything that happens. And I've always loved the Vigil Mass, watching people come into the faith. I love watching them receive their sacraments.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really just a gorgeous Mass, watching them be baptized, receiving Holy Communion, being confirmed. It's just so beautiful to watch what happens to those souls and come and join us
Yes.
at the vigil. I love that Mass. It's great. Can I just clarify one thing? St. Maximilian Kolbe, if you're in Cape May County and you want to come to Tenebrae, 7:00 on Good Friday.
Oh, thanks for looking that up.
Mhm. Yep.
That's awesome.
I was afraid. I didn't want anybody showing up. And that's why I was like, oh, Father.
Like Donna said it on the
Joyce, I hope you
podcast.
did- Right. Donna said on a podcast, Father Peter Joyce, that you were doing Tenebrae, and it's confirmed. It's in the bulletin. I looked.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So the Easter Vigil Mass, I have the pleasure of teaching teenage students RCIA in our school, in our church, excuse me. And we always have one or two being baptized young, like these are young adults or teenagers, and I get to call up their names and I'm right there to see it. And I always tear up, like literally start crying, as you were mentioning, Donna, watching them, these people that I know I've prepared and they're ready to come into the faith and how excited they are. And I've had also the pleasure of being a godparent to some of them. So Father, you're probably the one that baptizes them at your parish, being the pastor. How is that
Yep.
from a priest perspective to see these young
The
people or
joy.
young or adults coming in?
I'm sorry.
How the adults coming in, how is it for you? You said joyful.
Oh, the joy is just off the chart, because here these people are really taking Christ on themselves. They're dying with Christ in those waters of baptism so to rise with him, to eternal life. And it's to be able to administer the sacraments. It's pure joy. That's all I can say. Pure joy.
And not just baptism, but communion and confirmation as well. It all takes place at that Mass. So it's probably a rare time that you get to confirm as well as a pastor, because our bishop in our diocese does all the confirmation. So this is a rare time where you get to administer that sacrament as well.
Yeah.
And can I make the connection? Isn't that where all the many of the oils from the Chrism Mass are actually used?
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was good. I was connecting the dots here.
So it's fresh.
Howdy.
It's freshly made. They're that fresh scent. If you don't get to smell it at the Chrism Mass because it's only being live streamed and we don't have smell-o-vision,
Right.
go to the Holy Saturday Mass at your parish and you can smell it, because you get to. It is. I always joke with my students. I say, "All right, can I smell you afterwards?" Like I always want to smell. Now this year maybe I can't get that close, but in the past I'm always like, oh, that scent
I
is
love the
so
smells.
beautiful of Chrism.
Yeah.
I've had so many parents and godparents, even for the baptism for children, when we put the sacred chrism on the crown of the child's head, they're like putting their nose up to the child's head to get a good whiff at the chrism because it just smells so beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just to put a button on this, a lot of people, some people will be critical because the Easter Vigil Mass does take a long time. It's like a 2-hour Mass, possibly even 2.5-hour Mass. But you know what? It's a worthwhile Mass to go to because it's so rich in every element of our faith that it's one of those things. I'm not telling you got to go to every year, though you probably should. It's completely different than Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday, you bonnets, kids in cute little dresses, and everybody's dressed to the nines and all that stuff. And, that's lovely and stuff like that. But that almost feels more like Christmas morning than the Easter Vigil Mass, which is really an incredible spiritual occasion to be there.
It is.
I would agree with that. And I also think so I'm a cradle Catholic, right? My parents baptized me as an infant. We're actually watching people come into the faith that have made a decision that this is home. This
Yeah.
communion with the faith, with the Catholic Church. And I just love watching them come in. It's just beautiful. And so I agree with you. If you have not been to an Easter Vigil, you should go.
Yeah, and if you haven't been since 2 years ago, go, because last year we missed that aspect of the those coming into the faith through RCIA. That it wasn't present last year at our Easter vigils. It was just a straight vigil. So now we'll have it again. So if it's been 2 years, we invite you to come and join as well, because it's nice. It's exciting for these elect as well. I'm excited for them. I have one of my students making all of his sacraments, becoming Catholic, and his sister made him last year, and now she's his sponsor. So I'm really excited for his family. He inspired her. he was inspired by her, so it's really exciting.
That's wonderful. Well,
Yeah, to pray for everybody who's being received into the church too. You know,
Yes.
that they keep that light of faith, burning in their own lives. Not just for the day that they're received into the church, but keep praying for them all through the year, that they keep that flame of
That's
faith
very
up.
true.
I would agree with that. And the last thing I would add is Easter isn't just one day. It's a season all the way to Pentecost. Let us not forget.
Let's keep getting excited. We got 50 days to celebrate. Well, it's also the solemnity of Easter is an octave. So we have 8 days of saying Happy Easter, like right there, of that excitement.
Well,
50 days.
everybody, thank you very much for joining for the call.
Thank you,
That was
Michael.
wonderful. Father Gormley, have a great Easter. Donna, thank you for getting Father Gormley on the podcast. Carrie, thanks for joining us. And to our listeners, we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.